Cleopatra 7 Philopator, Extended Narrative. Chapter 1, Introduction and Historical Context. The story of Cleopatra 7 begins not just with her birth in 69 BCE, but with the extraordinary sweep of history that shaped her world. 3 centuries earlier, Alexander the Great had conquered Egypt, ending centuries of Persian rule. After Alexander's death in 323 BCE, his empire was divided among his generals, the Diadochi. One of them, Ptolemaic, took Egypt and established a dynasty that would rule for nearly 300 years. The Ptolemies were Greeks, Macedonians by blood, and they ruled Egypt as foreign kings, often from the marble halls of Alexandria, a city founded by Alexander himself. They embraced Egyptian religious traditions, presenting themselves as pharaohs in temple reliefs, but spoke Greek in their courts, read Homer rather than Egyptian hieroglyphs, and married within their own family to keep their bloodline pure. Incestuous marriages between siblings were common, a practice shocking to the Greeks but acceptable under Egyptian royal custom, which revered divine brother-sister unions like those of Isis and Osiris. By the time Cleopatra was born, the Ptolemaic dynasty was in decline. Corruption, court intrigue, and external threats had weakened the kingdom. Egypt was still rich, its fertile Nile Valley produced grain that could feed half the Mediterranean, but politically it was becoming a pawn in the struggles of the great powers of the era. The Roman Republic, expanding relentlessly, had already intervened in Egyptian affairs several times. Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII Auletes, the flute player, had to bribe the Roman Senate with enormous sums to secure recognition of his rule. These bribes emptied the treasury and forced higher taxation, causing unrest among the Egyptian population. Alexandria itself, the jewel of the Hellenistic world, was no longer just a city of learning and culture, it had become a stage on which the ambitions of Rome played out. Cleopatra's life, then, was set against a backdrop of instability. Internationally, Rome was lurching toward civil war between Julius Caesar and Pompey. Domestically, Egypt was a kingdom on the edge, with riots, famine, and powerful court factions vying for control. Culturally, the kingdom was a fusion of Greek rationalism and Egyptian spirituality, creating a rich but politically complex environment. To survive and to rule in such an environment required more than just a royal title. It required intelligence, charisma, political cunning, and courage. Cleopatra would possess all of these in abundance. Chapter 2, Childhood and Education. Cleopatra was born into a palace of marble halls, golden columns, and perfumed gardens overlooking the Mediterranean. Alexandria was the greatest city in the known world, a bustling port where Egyptian priests, Greek philosophers, Jewish scholars, Roman merchants, and Nubian traders crossed paths. It was a city of light and learning, home to the great library, where tens of thousands of scrolls preserved the wisdom of Greece, Egypt, Babylon, and India. From an early age, Cleopatra was immersed in this cosmopolitan environment. She watched astronomers chart the heavens, physicians practice medicine, mathematicians debate in shaded courtyards. Her tutors instructed her in Homer, Plato, and the philosophy of Aristotle. She learned to recite poetry, to speak persuasively, to govern with reason. Most remarkable of all, Cleopatra learned Egyptian. This was no small decision. Her predecessors, the earlier Ptolemies, often remained aloof, speaking only Greek and surrounding themselves with Greek advisors. Cleopatra, however, embraced the culture of her subjects. She attended religious ceremonies, studied Egyptian mythology, and sought to present herself not only as a Greek monarch but as a true pharaoh. Even as a child, she observed the brutal realities of palace politics. Her father, Ptolemy XII, struggled to maintain power, facing revolts and the constant threat of Roman intervention. Cleopatra saw courtiers plot, ambassadors bargain, and rivals fall. This early exposure to intrigue sharpened her instincts. Chapter 3, Accession and the Struggle for Power. When Cleopatra's father died in 51 BCE, she was just 18. His will made her co-ruler with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, who was about 10 years old. A regency was established, dominated by advisors loyal to the boy king. Cleopatra, however, had no intention of being a ceremonial figurehead. She appeared on official documents without her brother's name, minted coins bearing her image alone, and signed decrees as sole monarch. This assertiveness alarmed Ptolemy's guardians. A power struggle erupted that eventually forced Cleopatra to flee Alexandria and raise an army in Syria. Meanwhile, the Mediterranean world was in turmoil. Julius Caesar and Pompey were fighting for control of Rome. After being defeated at Pharsalus, Pompey fled to Egypt, seeking refuge. Ptolemy Xii's advisors, hoping to win Caesar's favor, murdered Pompey on the shore. When Caesar arrived in Alexandria and was presented with Pompey's severed head, he was horrified. He decided to stay in Egypt to settle its dynastic dispute. Cleopatra saw her chance. Chapter 4: Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. The story of Cleopatra's entrance to Caesar's quarters has become legend. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, Cleopatra quickly returned to Egypt, where she had her brother Ptolemy XIV killed, making Khazarion her co-ruler. Chapter 5: Cleopatra's Rule and Vision. Cleopatra's reign was a period of revival for Egypt. She reorganized the tax system, personally meeting with administrators and demanding efficiency. She encouraged agriculture, ensuring grain shipments both for Egypt and for export, a key source of revenue. She embarked on ambitious building projects, restoring temples, commissioning statues, and expanding Alexandria's harbor. She portrayed herself as Isis reborn, wearing the traditional vulture headdress and appearing in public ceremonies with divine dignity. Cleopatra was not only a ruler but a patron of science and learning. She corresponded with scholars, supported advances in medicine and astronomy, and ensured that Alexandria remained the intellectual heart of the ancient world. Chapter 6: Alliance with Mark Antony. After Caesar's death, Rome was plunged into new civil wars. Cleopatra's survival once again depended on choosing the right ally. In 41 BCE, Mark Antony summoned Cleopatra to meet him in Tarsus. She arrived in a spectacle meant to dazzle. Her barge sailed up the river with purple sails, silver oars, musicians playing, and Cleopatra reclining dressed as Aphrodite. Antony, charmed and politically astute, allied with her. Together they formed a partnership that reshaped the eastern Mediterranean. Cleopatra supported Antony's campaigns with money and supplies. Antony granted Cleopatra new territories, enlarging her kingdom. Their romance became legendary. They spent the winter together in Alexandria, famously living in opulence, hosting banquets, and forming a group called the Inimitable Livers, dedicated to feasting and pleasure. Yet their relationship was also deeply political. Cleopatra sought to secure Egypt's independence. Antony saw Egypt as a power base for his rivalry with Octavian. Chapter 7: Propaganda and the Road to War. In Rome, Octavian used Antony's relationship with Cleopatra to turn public opinion against him. He claimed Antony was abandoning Roman values, becoming enslaved by an Eastern queen. When Antony publicly declared Khazarion the legitimate son of Caesar and distributed Eastern territories to Cleopatra's children, the donations of Alexandria, Octavian had the perfect pretext for war. In 32 BCE, the Roman Senate declared war, not on Antony, but on Cleopatra personally, framing the conflict as a defense of Rome against a foreign monarch. Chapter 8: The Battle of Actium. The decisive battle came in September 31 BCE. Antony and Cleopatra's fleet faced Octavian's navy, commanded by Agrippa. The fighting lasted for hours, with neither side gaining a clear advantage, until Cleopatra's squadron suddenly broke through and fled south. Antony followed with several ships, abandoning the battle. The remaining fleet soon surrendered. Actium was not just a military defeat, it was a psychological one. Antony and Cleopatra's cause collapsed. Chapter 9: The Final Days. Octavian invaded Egypt the following year. Antony attempted to resist but was defeated outside Alexandria. When he heard, falsely, that Cleopatra had killed herself, Antony stabbed himself with his sword. Gravely wounded, he was brought to Cleopatra, dying in her arms. Cleopatra attempted to negotiate with Octavian but realized she would be taken to Rome as a prisoner. Choosing death over humiliation, she arranged her suicide. Ancient accounts say she used a basket of figs to smuggle an asp into her chamber, allowing it to bite her. She died surrounded by her loyal attendants, dressed regally, as a queen. Octavian, now master of the Roman world, had Khazarion killed. Egypt was annexed as a Roman province. Chapter 10: Legacy and Memory. Cleopatra's death marked the end of the Hellenistic Age. For centuries afterward, Roman writers like Plutarch and Dio Cassius shaped her image, often portraying her as a seductress rather than a stateswoman. Yet modern historians have re-evaluated her as a skilled ruler who defended Egypt's independence for as long as possible. She has inspired countless works: Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra, Baroque operas, paintings by Renaissance masters, and modern films, most famously the 1963 epic starring Elizabeth Taylor.